Don't want to use headphones on the bus because you have kids? I'll sing a children's song, by user Lethebimbo. This was a few years ago on a 13-hour Greyhound trip when I was in the middle of a mental breakdown. These people were listening to music loudly, and if that wasn't bad enough it was just awful. It was the kind of rap where the only words you can understand are BCH and NR, and they were said frequently. It was driving me nuts, so I tried politely asking them to use headphones. They refused because they had kids based on the claim the kids needed entertained. So I told them to give the kids headphones. This led to me getting cussed out, which led to a heated argument. Another passenger started listening to music loudly just to troll me at this point. I tried to get the bus driver to enforce the rule that says headphones are required to listen to music on the bus. He threatened to dump me on the side of the road instead. I kind of hit my limit at that point and decided to share my misery with the whole bus. I said, "Okay. Since we're not enforcing the rules about not being noisy and using headphones, I'll just sing." Now, it should be noted that while I don't have the best voice, I am a trained vocalist from childhood. I can at least avoid sounding like a strangled cat. If I want to. I didn't want to. I launched into a very loud, hoarse, and off-key rendition of the song that never ends. It took one sing-through for the troll to put headphones in. It took a couple loops before the whole bus was screaming at the other passengers to either put in headphones or turn off their music so that I would shut up. We rode the rest of the way in blissful silence. Refuse to give a painkiller to someone crying in pain? Congrats on failing your final, by user Coed Warkid. 2 years ago I used to share an apartment with my sister and 2 other roommates. In the flat next to us lived 3 girls whom we've known for years, as we all used to live in the same dorm years ago, plus their 2 new roommates whom we didn't know well. The other girls were messy and kinda immature because they were younger than us, but we all mostly got along since we go way back. This one time my sister and one of our roommates got into a huge argument with the girls from the other flat because of them taking utensils and clothes from our place without permission and losing them. I didn't participate in the argument, but there was obvious tension between the 2 flat residents. Anyway, a few days after that, after a long day of being cooped up in the library preparing for a difficult final, I got home late at night and there was only one of my roommates home that night. Pretty much as soon as I got home my face started swelling up and my tooth started aching like crazy. I was in so much pain I started crying and there were no painkillers and I had no way to get out to the pharmacy that late at night. My roommate, who also had nothing to do with the argument earlier, knocked on the door of our next door neighbors and one of their newer roommates whom we barely knew answered the door. My roommate then explained the situation to her and that I'm in excruciating pain and asked if she could borrow some painkiller. The girl looks my roommate up and down and tells her, "Oh, I have painkillers but I'm not gonna give them to her because I'm the sister of the girl who got into a silly argument with her roommates." Obviously I'm stunned someone can be this petty, but I let it go and I survived the night. Now here for the pettiness on my behalf. A few days after I happened to be home late at night and I hear the doorbell ring. I open the door and lo and behold, it's the same girl who refused to spare me an ibuprofen a few days ago. Except of being snarky, she looked super distraught and defeated. She looked both surprised and relieved I was the one who answered the door that night. She opens her mouth, "I'm sorry. I don't know how to say this. My charger died on me and I have a final tomorrow morning and a submission now and I just started preparing. I know you have one like mine and I was wondering if I can borrow yours." Obviously she was down on her luck that day because I wasn't my usual generous self. I looked her up and down and said, "No, sorry, I'm using it right now." And shut the door in her face. This might be the pettiest thing I've ever done in my life, but I don't exactly hate myself for it. Edit. By painkillers I mean ibuprofen or diclofenac. I guess this was lost in translation. They're still painkillers, just not what everyone assumed I wanted. LOL, sorry guys. Second edit. I'm seriously cracking up at the folks in the comments saying I'm a bad person and how better they are than me. I'm not perfect, but at least I don't go around telling people I don't know and never met how better I am than them. Shaming a passive-aggressive dude, by user Mimbly. My 30F grandfather passed away a few days ago and I was attending the funeral. I drove myself back home but needed to make a few stops to get the basics for the week. So I stopped at a local grocery store at like 10 at night and started just doing basic shopping. As I stared at the 5 different varieties of apples, I look up as a cart goes behind me, bumping into me a little. Not enough to be seen as on purpose, just enough to get my attention. Standing before me is a man clearly in the early boomer category. I move to the side and mutter an "excuse me," thinking he would also like to stare at the ridiculous price of Honeycrisp apples. Nope, of course not. He looks at me for a bit too long before saying "nice dress." Bit early for Halloween, though. You'd look better in color. Well, that's a new one. I've got chronic RBF, so I've gotten the "you should smile" comment a handful of times. I look him dead in the eyes with an exhausted expression that only someone who's been up since 4 a.m. to make a 4-hour drive for a funeral could have. I'll admit, I was too tired to even think that this was a clever retort. I was just being bluntly honest when I replied, I was just at a family member's funeral. He was silent for a bit too long, as if waiting for a punchline. He laughed awkwardly and I continued to stare at him with a blank expression that Wednesday Addams would be proud of. Eventually, he muttered an "oh, shit, sorry" and shuffled off like an ashamed bipedal slug. Not the greatest revenge in the world, but it definitely made my day a little better. Embarrass my colleague? I'll embarrass you in front of all of yours, by user Fenchholmesteren. I'm a photographer and I've been contracting for a school photo company for a few months at the start of each school year for a while now. This company sends out 2 photographers who work as a team, switching off each day, one for group class photos and the other on portraits. A few weeks ago I was out at a school with one of my colleagues who is a highly competent photographer and makes a ton as one of our country's most sought-after wedding photographers. Point is, she knows her shit. We had a 9th grade special ed class, the class for kids with ADHD and the ones who struggle in school because of home life, not the class for developmentally disabled students, come in with 2 teachers who both had bad attitudes, like photo day is a total inconvenience and not worthy of taking seriously. Which sucks because it doesn't help the students enjoy it or cooperate. So my colleague was on group pictures and got their photo all set up, teachers rolling their eyes the whole time. Then when she started taking pictures she says "say cheese." Like she would with any other group. Different phrase of course in our language, but equivalent and as ubiquitous as cheese. In the US. Well, the teachers, Martin and Helly, both immediately start chewing my colleague out for being patronizing and belittling, as they believe saying cheese is only for children. They felt insulted on behalf of their students even. My colleague was crushed and embarrassed to be yelled at in front of the students. She's all in her head like, I've been having wedding parties say cheese for years, have I been offending people? Well, today I got sent out to the same school to take a staff photo. I get every teacher in the school set and take the first picture and yell "say cheese." Which the majority did with gusto, including those 2. Then I said, "Oh no, I'm so sorry. I forgot, Martin and Helly don't like to say cheese, they're way too cool to say something so childish. Let's go with something more adult, everyone say whiskey," so Martin and Helly aren't embarrassed. Those teachers get an array of looks from deeply annoyed with them to simply puzzled. Martin and Helly look properly ashamed. Then the whole group yells whiskey so Martin and Helly aren't embarrassed. Edit, grammar, spelling. I cost me neighbors over $100,000, by user Killjoy2408. My neighbors have 9 cars total parked in the street. They always park 2 of those cars in front on my house and won't move them the whole week. We have a regulation where you live that you can't leave your car parked for more than 48 HRS in the same spot. My neighbors have a pretty big driveway where they can fit 4 cars, but it's always empty. They have told me they don't like to leave their driveway with cars because it looks tacky. Over half the cars they have, they don't even use them. They just use them to save parking spots for themselves. In 2021 I noticed they were building a second unit I'm back of their main house. I noticed that they completed the house in under a month. This raised some red flags because it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 months, with city inspections taking the majority of time. I submitted a ticket with my city through the app and advised them that there might be some illegal residential building without permits. I noticed my neighbors tearing down their second unit last week. We have a regulation where you live that you can't leave your car parked for more than 48 HRS in the same spot. My colleague was crushed and embarrassed to be yelled at in front of the students. She was all in her head like, I've been having wedding parties say cheese for years, have I been offending people? Well, today I got sent out to the same school to take a staff photo. I submitted a ticket with my city through the app and advised them that there might be some illegal residential building without permits. I didn't think of it much until a year later. I noticed my neighbors tearing down their second unit last week. Word got around our block that a city inspector was there making sure everything was being torn down. Based on what materials and labor they put into their second unit, I cost them over $100,000.